This is Vam Electric Ghost, and we're live on the air with Roberta Rosa for the first time. Welcome to the Fam Electric Ghost podcast. How are you doing today?
Thank you so much. I'm doing great. And you, how are you?
I'm doing well. I want to let people know that we are a featured podcast on Newsly. You can see the icon up there. It says listen on Newsly. Later tonight, the audio only version of the podcast will be on Newsly. If you want to check that out on that platform, you can use the coupon code of Ghost and listen to that for 30 days for free on that platform if you choose to check it out. We also have your website, www.fillthevoid.club/en up up on the screen, and that will be fully clickable when we're published so people can check out that URL. And I want to let people know tonight we are actually at episode 1024 of the podcast. And today we're going to discuss challenges navigating a default unhealthy world and empowering individuals to break free from societal norms, which is a little bit of what you said. I couldn't put the whole thing, but there was a statement on your pod match. I wanted to
Mm-hmm.
put as much as I could, and yeah, maybe you tell the folks a little bit about your background. Maybe give us a brief story about like who you are.
Yes, of course. So basically, it all starts. I was born in Buenos Aires in Argentina. Right now, I'm 29 years old, and I started my life, well, when I was 11, more or less, I started playing field hockey in my country. And then it turned out the years went by and I started like getting really good at it. And finally, I ended up playing in the national team of field hockey for Argentina. So I had like basically many difficulties in continuing my high school, for example. I had to quit high school 2 years prior finishing because I had to dedicate my life to training every day. I had to train in the morning and in the afternoon, 4 hours in the morning, 4 hours in the afternoon, every day, except Sundays. That was the only day that I didn't train. So imagine being a girl of 18 years old, training every day with girls that are, 30 years old, 35. It's like more than 10 years difference. So
Wow.
basically, I started like living a life that wasn't real for the age that I had. Like I didn't go to school for months, and then suddenly I went one day to say hi to the professors and to my friends, and they were like, "Hi, Roberta, it's been so long." And every one of my friends were going to school, they were going out, they were going to parties, they were having boyfriends, girlfriends. But the only thing I could care about and do was play the sports. So basically, that continued for 2 years, more or less, until I got really tired of the pressure. The life that I had to sustain was very difficult. I had to like keep up with certain like expectations that weren't even real for my age, even like body wise.
Mhm.
So I went to school and I compared myself with other girls, and all the other girls were like normal for 18 years old, but I had like double the muscle, double the size. So it was like I felt weird.
Yeah, because you're a
Uh,
professional athlete, and
yes,
everybody else was just like a regular, teenage
yes,
kid,
yeah,
and you had gotten into this
and
world where you kind of leaped into it because you had the ability, but that kind of left you like not having a childhood or having that teenage, high school experience because you're jumping to like what you would do in your mid 20s
yes,
way
exactly,
before you probably should have been doing it, maybe prepared to do it.
exactly. And so basically, 2 years went by, and I was like, the life of an athlete has an end. At a certain point, your body like cannot keep up, and you just have to quit.
Mhm.
So I was like, what am I gonna do when I won't be able to run anymore as fast? What am I gonna do in my life? So basically, I said like, I have to quit and maybe start studying. I really liked to be a creative and design. So I was like, I'm going to quit this life and I'm going to go into university and start studying graphic design and create a career for myself. Um, and so what happened is when I decided to quit field hockey, first of all, that was like my passion. The only thing I knew how to do in life was play the sport, imagine. So I quit it and I was basically left in like a cliff, like without knowing what to do. Even though I had to study, I knew the path, what society tells you to do is like, you have to study, you have to get a job, whatever. But I was like, what do I do? I felt completely empty, literally empty, like no passion for pursuing, senseless, without anything. And that's when it all started. That's why I say that unhealthy default society, because all it's like the society tells you, oh, you're feeling pain, you're feeling sad, come on, have a drink, go out with your friends, go to the party, go to the club. So basically all the energy that I used to put in the sports, I started putting all my energy into going out, partying with my friends, doing all the things that I didn't have time to do before. And that brought me like many problems in every sense, like substance abuse. I had eating disorders because also like body image, even for women, it's difficult. I looked at myself and compared with the other girls and I didn't like what I saw. So I started having all types of eating disorders. I felt pain every day because of quitting field hockey, and that pain that I had inside, I was like trying to numb it by also eating, like binge eating, going out, socializing, etc., etc., etc. That's why I call this like filling the void. I was basically filling the void every day with by different ways,
Yeah, it seems like you went from one extreme of being like a professional athlete
Yes.
that was highly disciplined. And then,
Mm-hmm.
that's a very extreme level of professionalism, right? So if you don't have a
Exactly.
balance, like a lot of times in life, it's about balance. Like, so even if like
Exactly.
I'm a musician, right? I could be like totally just doing that, but I like doing other things. So
Exactly.
if you become if one thing falls that way, then you don't have anything. And so because if you go to
Exactly.
too many extremes, it's almost like they needed to allow you to have space for other things. But
Yes,
I guess the
exactly.
rigor of the sport didn't give you that room. And so then once you
Exactly.
left it, you were like on the cliff, like you said, you didn't have a way to step down. Nobody kind of stepped you down from that extreme. And so you would probably want to gravitate toward feeling some aspect of that, which must have been
Mm-hmm.
very powerful to feel that and then go to nothing. Then I can see why you could fall into substance abuse or other things or eating disorders because it's going from one thing to the next. If you're a musician, you're on stage in front of like 10,000 people, and then suddenly you're in the
Exactly.
bus or you're in an
Yes.
apartment. It's like it's very
Yes.
like you're like that's when we fall into substance abuse too because we're looking for that energy, and it might
Exactly.
only be on for 2 hours out of the day, and then the rest of the day there's none of that. So how do you deal
Exactly.
with that?
Yeah. And I was like, normal life sucks. Like you have to learn. I had to learn how to focus on the little things to even feel something because I was like an extreme sensation seeker. I was seeking extreme feelings constantly because of the high success, like you were explaining.
Mhm.
To feel alive, I needed those extreme sensations. Same feeling of like entering the stadium with like millions of people shouting. You know what I mean? I was like
Yeah,
dopamine
yeah.
seeker in every sense: in food, in sex, in drugs, in alcohol, socializing, and yeah, that brought me all the problems. I was like a rebel. I was like even addicted to rebellion against the society. I was
Oh
also
yeah,
like
yeah.
in a lot of anger. I was also in a lot of anger. Yeah.
A
Um,
lot of artists were in the same kind of zone. Like a lot of times as artists, we're
Yeah.
rebelling against like everything, right?
Mm-hmm.
To show that there could be this like a different lifestyle, which is like the not the 9 to 5 corporate world. If you're an artist,
Yes.
it's a totally different
Yes.
thing. You're like you're living from like 12 o'clock at night to like 6 in the morning. They have a totally
Mm-hmm.
different schedule. Like you're in that
Exactly.
different world. And so it's like, how
Exactly.
do you deal with other people when you're used to that kind of different world? It's hard. It's
Mm-hmm.
hard to kind of get back
Yeah.
down from that.
Yeah. And then, yeah, I was like, I had such a huge void that I couldn't even look at it in the eyes. As strong as I was playing the sports, I was very weak in facing my own demons. That's the hardest part, you know? And I also was very afraid of
Mm,
being a failure. I was afraid of being a failure and having like, I was frustrated. I felt as if I had failed my own self in what I thought that was going to be my life, you know. um, and also like even this default unhealthy society that we live in, they teach us to function in the system, but at what cost you have to function, right? That's the question that I have all the time. I was like,
yeah,
I had.
it's hard to be happy. It's hard to have that happy balance. Like
Mm-hmm.
if you're told that everything is like on an extreme level, like if you have to have that dedication to be an
Yeah.
athlete or to be a high performing musician or an artist or in the theater or movies, like the problem is like you have these like zenith moments and then everything drops down from there.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
you find like with a lot of people in those kind of situations, they have a hard time dealing outside of the zenith moment, like at
Yes.
the moment that you're in front of all that big crowd in the stadium, and then the rest of the day is not like that. So how do you
Exactly.
deal with that? And then how do you deal with like an imposter syndrome, where you don't feel like you deserve it, where or you don't feel like you're measuring up, and you're trying to be so perfect. And the thing is, no one can be perfect, and it's like
Yes.
accepting that everything's like a process, and not every day is going to be that zenith moment. That's hard to deal with if you have that kind of personality where you want
Yeah.
perfection, then you fail. How do you deal with the failure? How do you understand that failure is actually part of life?
Exactly. And even like my generation doesn't tolerate frustration. Like I couldn't tolerate being frustrated because of quitting the only thing that I knew how to do. Even being a perfectionist is a way of filling the void. It even happens to me currently. Sometimes I get into this perfectionist mode where I feel so great that I wake up early, I go to the gym, I eat so healthy all week, I'm like the perfect girl, and that makes me feel so good that it's like a way of covering, any
Hmm.
pain or bad emotions that we have inside. So it's a very tricky thing, the perfectionism. Um, and yes, with this filling the void, perfectionism or whatever way you have, it's a way of numbing yourself. So then in my life, I had to literally relearn how to function again in the normal society, like how to register and detect my own feelings, then how to communicate them, and then caring about other people's, being empathetic and compassionate with the ones around me, because there's a point that you reach where you are so numb that then you forget how to even love yourself and the people around you.
Yeah, it's like you have to love. It's like this. It's like an old story. But
Mm-hmm.
before you can love anybody else, you gotta love yourself. Before
Yes.
you can be empathetic with other people, you have to be empathetic for yourself. And so
Mm-hmm.
if you're a person that wants to be perfect, I run it with musicians, where
Yes.
they go and they spend like 100, they take 100 takes on one song, right, trying to make
Yes.
it perfect. And as a producer, I'll tell them like, you know what, take number three is has some errors in it, but it's very powerful and it's vulnerable and it's great. And there's nothing you're doing in take, you know, number 4 to 99 that's any better than what you did in the first three. And getting people
Mm-hmm.
to accept the vulnerability of like of sometimes something that's imperfect. Because a lot of time with art and in life, like that thing that's actually like honest and vulnerable and point in time, and you're not trying to correct it. That's what life is. It's like that is that moment. You live in that moment, and that's what it
Yeah.
is. And you let it go and you accept it. But there's a lot of times it's hard for people to accept that kind of imperfection of the moment. But it's
Yes,
actually
exactly.
very powerful. And once you accept it
Very.
and you start to live with it, you say, "Well, there actually was nothing wrong with that."
Yeah.
You know?
It's the most powerful thought is this in life. It's literally to find stillness in the impermanence, or to find like calmness in the impermanence, because life, it's a constant change. So if we are constantly feeling uncomfortable with the changes and try to numb ourselves, in reality we're just escaping constantly, while the key lies in connecting and being able to accept the changes, the ups and the downs, and being able to feel comfortable in the uncomfortableness.
Comfortable.
you know
Yeah, because the whole thing about being an artist, right? Most of the time, the work we create, it comes from pain. Most
yes.
of the creative people I'm around, if they're super happy, their work isn't actually is as impactful as when they
Hmm.
take the painful moments and turn it into art. Whether you're a painter or an actor, musician, a photographer, any kind of form of art, what happens is like we are able to have like basically like this flow to the universe where I can like receive, and it's inside and it's outside, and I can channel what's around, and I can channel what's in and what's out, and I can actually empathize with other people and create moments that can connect
Hmm.
by being vulnerable. And the vulnerability, it can hurt you because what happens is somebody could say they hate what you did, right? And then that
Yeah.
hurts because you're giving something that's very personal. And the way you get around it is like, you know what? They can have that, but that doesn't hurt. That doesn't really affect me. That's their opinion. I can still move forward. I don't have to like be dependent on what they say. I can still
Exactly.
move forward and not have to. Yeah, and that's hard to do because a lot of people, as soon as they get the bad feedback, they're like done. I've known
Exactly.
tons of people to just stop as soon as
Yeah.
they get the feedback. It's like, well, I don't belong there. You know.
Exactly. Exactly. And that's what happens in our generation a lot. Like I was saying, like nobody tolerates frustration in any way, in any way. Even like when somebody's in pain, it's like the easy way to deal with it is blaming others. So taking the blame and putting it on something external, that's what it's easy. In my life, I was blaming my parents, for example, constantly. I was blaming my parents, and I lived in anger towards them for like most of my life. And anger is such a toxic emotion that we have inside that only takes us in cycles to create more and more anger. So I think the most important, first of all, is to like it's relearning the relationship with yourself, how to detect your emotions, and how to vocalize them. That's like a certain type of medicine, vocalizing our internal emotions, and from relearning the relationship with yourself, you are able to establish new relationship and better relationship with others. Personally, myself, I started doing therapy, and then that really helped me in the way to like go deep in the root, to see the roots of my traumas and the things that I carried in through my life. But then it wasn't until I discovered coaching that I was able to fully connect with my emotions, my spirit, and my physical body to change my lifestyle. And then I became a coach myself. um, but also, like we were talking about
Yeah, I
before,
think what happens like once.
yeah, tell me.
But what I was trying to say, I think what happens is like you become a coach because then you can take the lessons that you learned, right? And then you feel like the empathy because you felt, you
Hmm.
feel empathy for yourself. So then you can feel the empathy for other people. And then you can
Yes.
take the lessons that you learned and then listen to other people and then apply, individually. Everybody has a different story, but I think that's the root to, and it's creative.
Mm-hmm.
That is a creative capability of actually be listening to what is being said and then being able to, process like ideas around how do we resolve this? How does somebody come to terms with their imposter syndrome or come to terms with their negative feelings about their self? It- How do you deal with that? And if you address it in the mirror, then
Yes.
you can see the parallels with everybody else, and then becomes like this journey. And I think it's very creative what people do in coaching or, life coaches and mentors. Is because you're using your whole, like the holistic method of like
Mm-hmm.
everything that's affecting you, like all the legs, the physical, the
Exactly.
mental, the spiritual, and figuring it out.
Yes, exactly. And um, a very important concept that I want to say, it's also when I felt lost in life, everyone says like you have to find a purpose, you have to find like your sense, and having a direction in life is very important. But like purpose is such a big word, and in my opinion, it's not that you don't have to find anything. You don't have to find your purpose. You have to like create that you want. You got to create it yourself. And it's a process. And processes takes time. But people in current times are so impatient. Even myself, I am very impatient, that we don't want to even go through any processes. We're just
Right
focusing
now.
on the outcomes and on the goals that we have, and that's not going to take us anywhere. We need to be able to concentrate in the processes and the little things that are going to take us to what we want, you know but that's why I created my project Fill the Void, in a way to illustrate all these ways that we humans fill the void in this world, by creating different, for example, pills that represent different ways we fill the void. For example, I created a pill that's full of donuts and represents the way we fill the void with food. I created another pill that is filled with shopping things, because also a way to fill the void is going to the shopping mall and purchasing a new dress, whatever. So I created all these different ways to fill the void in like pharmaceutical products. I also created, all these are my illustrations, because as I was a designer
Hmm.
and then I became a coach, I tried to fuse all my skills into one. And another fun illustration I made, these are all 3D animations. Another one I did is called the Voidamin, because that's like in the filling the void world. The Voidamin is like the ultimate anesthesia that you take when you just want to numb yourself. So it's like, through parody, I wanted to represent all these ways that we humans numb ourselves, to create like a certain awareness, and to become like an emotional activist towards advocating, towards connecting instead of injecting, towards
Hmm.
feeling emotions instead of feeling, ourselves up with things.
Well, a lot of times we try to cut the emotion away. You're trying to numb it and push it down. And the one thing I like about art therapy, it's interesting because you took the idea of art to connect with what you're doing with your coaching. Is like art therapy. Like a lot of people feel like they can't be artists because you have to be Hemingway, you got to be
Yes.
Monet, you got to be Shakespeare. They think you have to be this high level person. And my whole idea is kind of like the punk aesthetic was, like the punk aesthetic was when punk bands came around, they didn't have to have perfect voice, right?
Mm-hmm.
They didn't have to have perfect pitch. They didn't have to play the guitar as well as Jimi Hendrix. You
Yes.
could just show that you had heart, you had emotion, and so you had bands like the Sex Pistols and the Clash and the Ramones. The whole idea of it was that you as a regular person, you could actually become a musician. You didn't have to
Mm-hmm.
be trained. That you can take your emotion and it's valid. And the same way with like art therapy, like don't have to be a painter to paint. You could
Yes,
use get that paint, but get the pastel, would do whatever you're gonna do, and just fill that void with like take those emotions and put it on the page because that's better than taking a drink. It's better than injecting taking a pill. If you can take your emotions and turn it into photography or art or something with the computer, anything you do, crochet, whatever, you can take that and turn it into something where it's more positive rather than
exactly.
negative effect on your soul or your spirit or your body.
Yeah, and the word you even said, the word validation, it's so important because what I had to unlearn in my life was that validation doesn't come from any external achievements. Like me coming from a professional sport, the only thing they teach you is or you're a winner or you're a loser. If you score a goal, you're the best. If you don't do the good pass, you're the worst. So basically,
Black
I
and
only
white.
thought,
Yeah.
yeah, I thought the like I was valid as a person only because of my external achievements, because I went to university or because I had my master's degree. But that's not true. We need to concentrate and know that we are who we are and we are valid just because we're humans on this earth. We don't need to do anything. Like just because of being alive, that's the only thing we need, and that's the truth. But like in the world we live in, it's very difficult to be able to think like this.
Yeah. Well, everybody wants to see your credential, like even as
Yeah.
musicians, I'm a self-taught musician. So some musicians like they want to know you went to Berkeley, they want to know you went to the conservatory, they want to know that you got a contract with a major label. So they don't consider if you're not in that, like if you're in the underground or you
Yeah,
came up and you're
exactly.
self-taught, they're like, oh, like I don't know. It's like a whole. It's like, but it's like everybody is valid. Like I go back and it's like, the original blues people, they didn't go to Berkeley. The original guys who wrote blues,
Hmm.
they didn't go to art school. They couldn't go to school, but they created a genre and they were like some of the best musicians ever. And they couldn't read and they weren't taught theory, but they had heart and soul and their people study their work in these so-called institutions. But it's like they didn't go to them. Most of the great musicians didn't even go to like big colleges.
Yeah,
They just are
exactly.
self-taught. They're self-taught. And so it's like the idea, it's like you can just want to do it. And I've
Hmm.
met tons of people who are artists. It's just like, I want to paint. So I went and got the brush. I went and got the all the tools and I just started doing it. And you find that sometimes the person that just has that drive and just
Yeah.
feels good enough that they can do it. And it
Yes.
really is about your inner feelings. Like that will actually, be more beneficial than any education. Is like if you have that drive, you go to the library and you go pick up the books and you pick up the tools. You can teach yourself anything,
Yeah.
and you don't have,
Exactly.
so it's just a matter of like, do you have the belief to do it?
Exactly. Exactly. You need to have the belief and you need to go step by step to create whatever you want to create. And the good thing is that in life, in reality, there's no rules. We can do whatever we want. We have to let our creativity and our minds fly, even though it's difficult. So another important concept I want to talk about is that, as we were talking, to to learn to deal with our emotions, it means externalizing them, and learning new communication skills and how to talk to others. Um, and you have to be very, I had to be very aware of the vocabulary, even that we utilize in our heads, how we talk to ourselves,
Mhm.
right? Um, and the reality is that we come into this world alone and we die alone. So if we have like our brains constantly judging and talking shit to ourselves, it's gonna be a constant torture, right?
Yeah, yeah. You got to be judgmental even toward yourself, probably first,
Hmm. Hmm.
because I think
Yeah.
the most people stop themselves. I've seen people stop themselves, from even getting into the gallery, getting on stage, even a
Yeah.
public speaker. Like they stop, somebody who they never did it until finally they broke through that moment. And then they
Hmm.
found out they gave themselves permission to do it. There was nobody stopping them but
Yeah.
themselves. And so it's like
Exactly.
that judgmental voice in your head that says, well, I don't belong on the stage, or I don't
Yes.
belong in the gallery, or I don't belong like, in this class because I can't make it. But like if you push yourself
Mm-hmm.
to believe in yourself, and it's like
Yes.
it doesn't have to happen overnight. The thing, like you said, the problem today, we have instant gratification. It has to happen so quick. With people don't understand, like there's no overnight sensation. Almost all the people
Exactly.
you think are overnight sensations probably took 5 or 10 years to get there, right? And so
Exactly.
they just they want to market that it happened overnight, but nothing
Yeah.
happens overnight.
Nothing. And even there's a good example to this because when you want to break a rock with a imagine you want to break a rock with a stick. You have to hit the rock many, many, many times, and the rock will only like crack from one instant to the other after hitting the rock for like 1,000 times, right? That's what happens when you want to achieve something, or when you want to change a habit or whatever you want to do. You just have to keep on doing the same thing over and over again until the real change happens, because of the amount of stacking you did for so long. Suddenly there's a click, and all that effort that you put, suddenly you see the results. Also, a good technique for externalizing emotions and everything that we're talking about. And there's another coach, a very important coach for me, that's called Nora Moseinko. And she taught me this concept about emotional compost. So the emotional compost is literally grabbing a pen and vomiting everything that you have inside in a notebook, whatever comes,
Mhm.
no matter what the order, what it is. And this action is literally like taking medicine for the heart. It makes you
Yeah,
feel like so much better and relieved. She also taught me that very important concept, that the brain also, it's like a sewer system. And the acceptance is the sewer system. It's not curing anything. We don't have to cure anything. Like, we don't have to cure addiction. It's accepting. That's the important word. And
mhm.
she also taught me how the brain is dysfunctional sometimes and makes everything difficult, because there's two intelligence that we possess: the intelligence in the brain and the intelligence in the heart. And sometimes we forget that we have an intelligence in the heart, but it's something that we can utilize. We don't only have to think with the brain.
Yeah,
What comes from the heart is like the feelings, and we have to feel with the body. That's how you feel with the heart, not thinking about what we're feeling. You see the difference? um,
yeah. I think what I like to do with my art a lot of times is
mhm.
I'm a big believer in like the flow state and stream
Yes.
of consciousness, which is kind of like you said, open up the book and just start writing. Like as an artist, like you could kind of agonize over every note, or you could just put the recorder on and just start playing the piano. I'm a piano player. So a lot of times I was like, I find that like I could sit around trying to arrange something, but if I just hit the record button and say, I'm going to play for like a half hour, and I'm not going to start and stop. I'm just going to play right through. I'm going to play
Yeah.
right through. And what I
Yeah.
find is if I go back and listen, there's really good stuff in that half hour. And I
Hmm.
didn't start and stop. And then I go back and say, there's a lot of good stuff I can use here. And it's very, very authentic. And it might not be perfect, but sometimes I've been able to take that kind of stream of consciousness like a writer. I've heard writers that will go into this kind of, they might build a world, they might build characters, but a lot of times they'll have this session where they just write, and they
Yes.
find like it changed the direction of their book because they
Hmm.
had a plan, but then they wrote this session and it actually, wow, it's actually, there's something there and it's actually better than what they planned. And so they're willing
Yes.
to take that moment and change their work. And
Mm.
that's what a lot of people have to understand is like you can try to plan things, but sometimes the universe has a plan for you.
Yes. Yes. I always say that. And I love what you said about the flow state, because you know what I do also? I also created, and this is an exercise that anyone can do. I created a manifesto, and I designed a name for my desired mode. I call it mode because that's how I operate. Like when I feel good and I'm at my best, I call it the flow mode. The flow, there's a flow mode, and then you could put names to your modes. You could have 3 or 2. In my case, I have 2. So when I'm at my best, I call it the flow mode. And here I describe the flow mode like the manifesto of an art piece or of whatever, a song. This is the manifesto of yourself. And I describe what is the flow mode, how does it work, what are the characteristics of this flow mode that I get into. And I also describe what happens when this mode is deactivated and when I go back to my unhealthy patterns. And this is very helpful because you become aware of the signals that are the little things, the little traits or behaviors you do that bring you back to the old ways or new. So when you're operating in your life, you're able to see those little hints, and you're able to see yourself and catch yourself when you go back to the bad habits. That's why I think this exercise of the manifesto is really, really helpful. And like habits, the habits never disappear. It's like you change them, but they never disappear, that they don't exist again. So it's something that we have to be aware of all our lives. Yeah. Also, like for me,
it's like the 12-step program. It never stops. So
yeah, never.
A lot of people think they can have something like 10 steps or 12 steps and it's done. It's like, well, you know what? If you've got an addictive personality, you're going to have to watch that for the rest of your life. And it's going to be a struggle. There can be days that are good and days that aren't so good.
Yes.
But they act like it's going to totally disappear. And it's not realistic. So the idea, it's like, a lot of times things ebb and flow. And so how do you act when things are not perfect? Like, how do you recover? Like a musician, like you hit the bad note. A lot of us in jazz, what we say, there are no bad notes because we learn how to recover. So the audience doesn't even know that we hit the bad note, but we know we might hit it, but we play in such a way that you don't even know that we hit it because we learn how to roll off of it. If you learn how to roll off of those things, like a jazz musician, like can take it as an opportunity. You don't take it as like a failure. It's an opportunity.
Exactly. Yeah. And the addictive personalities, I think, I don't like when people say like you're an addict your whole life. I think it's people that have more compulsive tendencies and maybe have more compulsive behaviors through life. But if you decide to change, you're able to literally press a button and start from scratch. It's not that you're going to be an addict your whole life. The old habits and the old ways, the old behaviors, you can change them and you have the power to restart from scratch.
You can redirect.
And build whatever you want to.
I think it's like you can redirect it. It's just, I think it's like you just have to be conscious that you have like a tendency that know yourself. Like if you're somebody that gets triggered and you go out and somebody triggers you and then you get into a road rage, right? If you know that you get into that and you become aware of what triggers you, you can start to mitigate that so it doesn't happen. Or reduce how much it happens. You can start to know yourself. Know that that trigger is probably there under the surface, but you can actually learn how to respond to it so you don't go off the path.
Exactly. And yeah, like for myself, becoming a coach taught me how to live one day at a time. Like every day when I woke up, I ask myself the same question, and it's every day. Like, what do I need today? What do I need right now? That's the way we say we have to know ourselves, but we are also in constant change. Every day we are feeling different. Like something happens today that I'm going to feel a little bit more down. Maybe tomorrow I'm a little bit more up, right? So what we have to ask ourselves every day is, what do I need right now? And act upon what we need in that moment. That's the best way to know ourselves. And the word need is very important because we have to honor what we need. And like our society that is unhealthy by default, like we were saying, we need to be the healthiest the healthy deviant of this unhealthy society. And this is a concept that Pilar Gerasimo writes about, and I love how she says this. We have to be the healthy deviant to the unhealthy default society. And we have to be the deviant,
that makes sense.
yeah, to the system to be able to survive.
Because a lot of times people think that the norm is like is not the deviant, like, because we have to actually go against that structure, because a lot of times that structure,
Exactly.
actually is negative, right? And so they when we if you try to bring
Exactly.
the light, then you're actually like in the small group of people. When you start to actually, say, well, why don't we be more empathetic when the crowd wants to bully, right? So the crowd wants to
Yeah.
bully somebody, the whole crowd will go and bully somebody, and then the one person will say, well, you shouldn't do that. The person like is in the minority saying, don't do that. So it's like the
Exactly.
healthy deviant. They're saying you shouldn't really bully these girls and boys, like they shouldn't do that. But like it's easier to go with that flow than to go against it, and that's where
Exactly.
it's hard to go against that wave. But I think
Yeah.
that's what that's the hope that people will take their humanity and go against that wave.
Hmm. Also, like a classic example I'm gonna give. Imagine like we want to lose weight, right? So we want to solve this problem that we want to lose weight. So the system offers us different ways to lose weight, and then we try one of those offers, like go do yoga, go to the gym, try this diet, blah blah blah. We try all these offers and we fail to solve this problem. So then we try another one of these offers and we fail again. And this is a cycle that keeps going until we are like these humans, completely depressed and broken and frustrated, trying to reach unrealistic expectations that we are never going to reach, And then what? It's very difficult to recover from this. So like then the pharmaceutical companies come into the game and they're like, take this to feel better, take this to, don't to don't have
Shortcut,
so you
it's a
don't have more
shortcut.
anxiety. And then what? Life ends and we are just trying to fit in a world that is unhealthy by default.
They want to shortcut something, like the pill is like the shortcut to the actual process
Mm-hmm.
of learning how to look in the mirror, look in the looking glass, identify like that the issue, right? Like identify that you've got imposter syndrome, identify that you've kind of been believing in some beliefs that aren't truths, right? Somebody told you you're never going to be good enough, or they told you that
Mm-hmm.
you can't be loved, and it's like
Yeah.
that's not true. That's what something they told you, and you believe it, but it's not true. You have to
Yeah.
come to that realization that like that you are fed a story, and so
Mm-hmm.
you can get beyond that, and you can kind of reprogram your brain, you can
Yes.
reprogram your heart, and it's not over. But then like if you think that it's over before you even start, then you're stuck in that cycle.
Yeah, and it's very difficult, and that's why I created Fill the Void, because like we live in these unhealthy cycles and we're always looking for easy way out of their problems, like taking meds that are going to make us feel better, drinking this drink, looking at social media, hanging out with friends. But in reality, like what it's going to make us feel good is what you are saying, that is facing the void, facing the darkness, but try to encounter this with love. Like we can be face to face with our own darkness, but like hug it, like a baby, and just nurture their darkness and say, like, it's gonna be okay, Roberta, I don't hate you. Because we see our darkness and we start like, why I hate this. This is so bad. This is so worse. And that's only gonna make it worse. And it's such a simple thing what I'm saying, but it's very hard to do. That's why I make this practice where like I literally visualize the darkest parts that I have, like a beast inside me. And then I literally hug it and kiss it. And I swear like everything changes. That just because of the feeling of hugging these uncomfortable feelings that we have inside, you know?
But it's like when you start to realize that, you get a little vulnerable, And
Mm-hmm.
vulnerability, I think, is the key, because a lot of people, they put on masks. There's a lot of things.
A
People
lot.
talk about the mask that they create. It's in society. People have a different. When you go to your job, you put on this mask that you're like going to fit in the cube. You're going to fit in the box, and you might not be a person that fits in that box at all. But you have to wear that mask to be in that world. And then you
Mm-hmm.
come out into another world, and you're like, you got to present a different way. So people are presenting themselves, and then they lose themselves with all their masks. It's like, who is
Exactly.
really you? How do you deal with the real you when you're putting on the show for your boss, put on a show for your wife or your significant other, put on a show for your kids, put on the show for your friends? It's like who is the real you?
Yeah, that's why it's important
Step
to like
forward.
yeah,
It's
that's
like
why it's
hard.
important to take our moments to be able to I'm it's very hard for me to meditate, to be honest. Like I don't meditate often, and the way I meditate is I go for a walk, like 1 hour or 30-minute walk where
Mhm.
I'm constantly moving my body, but in that movement I find like a certain peace, and I'm able to disconnect my mind from my thoughts. Everyone should have these moments where they
Yeah.
disconnect and only try to like breathe, and come and connect to this primal state of human being, because in reality we were wild men running around, nothing of this existed. We were like, in reality we were
Yeah.
created to live in caves, eat berries, and like go to the forest and gather food. What's happening in the world right now is not normal for us humans. So I think it's very, very important to
Yeah.
take these moments to like breathe and connect to the primal sensations of
There's a great
human
poem. Yeah,
beings.
there was
Tell me.
well, there's a great poet, I think Hawthorne or Longfellow,
Hmm.
that said, "Nature is the cathedral." Right. So there's this
Yes.
poet from the Victorian era that said, "Nature is the cathedral," and I live in New Hampshire, so we have these big pine trees. Forests are really beautiful. They call them the pines. So you go walk out in the pines by the river, and you can kind of get rid of the noise, like because if you listen to the river, you listen to the animals
Hmm.
and the
Hmm.
birds, and if you get into that nature that's in New England, northeastern United States, is like there is a lot of beauty in these forests. There's a lot of animals. There's deer. There's wild turkeys. There's beavers, and like, you just get into that environment, and it takes away all the pressure. You disconnect from your phone. You don't hear the noise. You don't respond to the chat or the tweet or whatever. You just get out there and you let nature be the cathedral, and it kind of heals you. Some people will go barefoot to kind of touch the earth because in the summer, because it's like
Yeah,
it makes you feel like you connect. And if I think that's the way you can restore yourself, and unless you're like, well, I don't like nature because I don't like bugs or something. But
yeah,
yeah, but I love nature, so I like go out. I go in the woods.
yeah, yeah. And I want to say my favorite quote of Cory Muscara that I want to share, and it says, "The key is not about creating another ladder. It is about recognizing that you're already on a never ending ladder to nowhere. And what keeps bound to cycles of suffering is an addiction to the idea that the next run will make this life less of an unpredictable, chaotic mess that inherently is." Right?
Mm.
I really love this quote, and it finishes with, "Spiritual freedom comes from relaxing into instability. Only when you embrace pain, sorrow, and confusion can it become the source of your freedom."
Yeah, that's what I find is like a lot of times when I write a song, it's about something that was like a melancholy moment or sad moment, and I turn it. It's very cathartic. If I'm sitting at
Mm-hmm.
the piano and I turn that melancholy or that sadness into a piece,
Yeah.
because then it gets wrapped up in the sound. So what was
Mm-hmm.
inside gets turned in these sound waves, and people can hear it. And then when you hear
Yeah.
it, now if you ever hear people playing piano and playing, guitars, it's like you can very much, if you're a musician, you can turn those emotions into feelings through the notes, and the
Exactly.
frequencies of those notes connect. And if
Exactly.
when you're a musician, that's your talent. That's what you can do. But you can do that with your voice. You can do that with your
Exactly.
words. You don't have to be a musician. You can
Exactly.
you can still do it.
Exactly. And also, I want to share my life mantra, and this I wrote it myself. And I find it very interesting to repeat it every day. And I want to share it because it says like this: I embody the role of a conductor, channeling light and serving as a catalyst for generating potent and positive energy. Rather than judging or condemning my darkness, I embrace it with open arms and understanding. I nurture self compassion that acknowledges both my strengths and weaknesses, and directing my attention towards what I am capable of. I repeat this every day of my life when I wake up. Because also, I really believe that we can generate the energy that we want by visualizing and feeling whatever we want to feel and whatever we want to attain in life. I think visualizing is a very important practice to create this.
And like an affirmation. I'm a Buddhist, and
Yeah.
we when we're Buddhists, we kind of chant and we have these affirmations at the beginning of the day,
Mm-hmm.
and we kind of focus on like what's the affirmation for the day. Well, I'm going to see the light. I'm going to have a good day. I'm going to be in the positive, because like if you think about the law of attraction, if you don't go out so prickly, if you don't go out generating negativity, then positivity is kind of come to you. But if you're like a negative actor and you're generating hostility and anger, well, you're probably going to bring that back. And that's the way we believe. It's like the
Exactly.
law of attraction. So if you have like this mantra or affirmation that you want to be in the light, you want to be
Mm-hmm.
in the positive, you can make that happen. Your brain and your spirit and the universe is like connected, and you can bring the
Yes.
energy to you. But some people think, well, that's foo-foo. They don't believe it. But like if you believe it, it will happen.
Exactly. I think the universe is so powerful, and it's not only about like the science and the facts that we know. There is something else, and I truly believe that like believing in or being spiritual and trying to connect with something greater, it really adds something positive, and it really adds something for humans to live better. And even now it's really hard times. That's what I think. Like current
Hmm.
times, and how technology is advancing with everything that's happening with AI, even social media. It's so difficult.
It's very
Like we think about
disheartening.
like think about the people before in tribes or like in little neighborhoods where there wasn't even like globalization or connectivity. People were just comparing themselves with like the neighbors or their family, and it was so easy. Like you did something good and you were just comparing yourself with like 10 more people, even less. And now we're every day we're constantly seeing and watching social media what everyone is doing around the world, and we're comparing ourselves with the whole planet Earth. And that is it's very overwhelming. Very overwhelming.
Yes, it's like it'll make you feel like you can't make it. Like not everybody's going to be Elon Musk, not everybody's going to be
Yeah,
Bill Gates. Not everybody's going to
exactly.
get to that level. And then you have all these influencers that telling you that, like, and some of it's like, it's AI enhanced. So what's
Mm-hmm.
real? Because we have this stuff now where you can fake images. You can make images more than what they are. And so what you see is not exactly the truth. It might not be the truth. And so
Exactly.
you're living in a world where people are saying, AI is so big, it will replace people. Well, who's gonna like if you replace all the workers with AI? Well, how are you gonna buy anything if AI is doing everything? With AI is not gonna buy the food.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah,
it's not gonna do the. So I think some people are forgetting, but there's a human element to everything. As an
yeah,
artist, people are trying to tell me, I should use AI to create my work. It's like, why would I do that when I have my piano?
yeah.
Why would I have a computer write my music when I have a piano and a bass guitar? Why would I do that? I don't
Mm-hmm.
see why I would do that at all. It's like it takes the fun out of it. Like not there's like
Exactly.
it doesn't feel what I feel. So it can make a song and maybe people will like it, but it's not
Yeah,
me.
yeah,
It's that. So it's like if that's what you want to show that you can do it, that's fine. But that's not
yeah,
a personal thing. A lot of
yeah,
things with art is personal. you take the personal out of art, what is it?
Yeah, it's a very complicated topic. And I also feel that also, well, like social media and all this of comparing ourselves with the world constantly creates a lot of hate, because we are seeing so many things that we were never even prepared to see. And that creates a lot of hate in the world, in the cultures, in societies. And it is very difficult. I also listened to a podcast recently that about Yuval talking about AI and saying how even in today's world people are very lonely, and sometimes people could establish a relationship with an AI machine, and just because we feel lonely, like when we establish relationship with something else, if we think and feel emotions towards that, we can even get to think that that machine or thing has consciousness, when in reality they don't.
Yeah, that can be very troubling, because it's
Yeah.
not to the point of it being a sentient being. And so then you're like, okay, if it's not really a sentient being that actually has its own emotions, then you're kind of getting conned. And that can be
Mm-hmm.
very hurtful to people who are reaching out. And there's a lot of human beings you could reach out to. You don't need to reach out to AI. There's a lot of people that probably need people to talk to.
Mm-hmm.
So having people talking to machines when there's a lot of people who are lonely would maybe better talk to them. It's like we have to start to redirect into, just because we can do it doesn't mean it should be done. That's the problem with
Exactly.
technology, is sometimes it gets ahead of the
Yes.
morality, the spirituality, why we can get beyond what we should think about. Like, just because the machine can do X doesn't mean it should do X. And
Mm-hmm.
that's why I think some people say, well, oh, we can do it, so let it do it. I was like, well, maybe not. you know,
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Um, and it is very complicated, the current times that we are living, even like with the wars. You
yeah,
know, people, we follow stories and we believe stories that have been like going on for centuries.
mm,
And sometimes we don't even know if those stories are right, or
yeah.
wrong, or
People
where
just
are
go
they
on,
coming from.
if they go on automatic. Like there's so many things that people do without actually checking to see if it's true, right? So
Exactly.
you get whole nations go to war. Look into the history of World War I. Is like, why did that happen? It's like a few people decided to do something and it affected millions of people.
Hmm. And
Why?
when,
Why did you need to do that? Just because this small group of people decided they should do X, then
yeah,
millions of people just followed it. So there's a tendency with war sometimes to follow something without like thinking about a deeper reason. Like, do you really need to kill another human being because of this?
yeah, and it's like in
Do
relationship,
or should you think about like maybe being more kinetic?
yeah, yeah, even in relationships, there's two people in simple relationship with our partners. When there's two sides, if both sides are trying to be right in what they're saying, there's never going to be a solution. Like, if the goal is to solve the problem, you don't have to think that what you are saying is right or the other person is right. Like, if the goal is to solve a problem, the approach is not trying to express how right you are.
Yeah. I think the problem with a lot of human beings is it comes down to like not sharing. There's like, this planet has limited resources, has
Mm-hmm.
limited space, limited water, limited food. Do you let everybody have a piece of it, or do some people have more pieces than others? And if that gets down to the heart of almost every human conflict, is some groups want more than the other. Some groups aren't willing to share with the other. And so
Yeah.
it really gets down to an empathy. Shouldn't every human being on planet Earth have the right to be on planet Earth and have the right to have the resources of planet Earth? Or some people feel that they have more rights than others. And that's really the heart almost every single conflict on that's ever been with human beings. Is some
Yeah.
people give themselves a reason why they should have more resources than others. And
Exactly.
at the end of the day, if you're a citizen of the planet, shouldn't you have access to everything?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So I
Very,
think
very
people
good
would think you're
point.
more humanitarian, universal. I'm an earthling. I'm not from a nation state. I'm an earthling human being and I have a right to be here. If people would think
Mm-hmm.
in that terms, we get to a more evolved humanity, which isn't science fiction, which I like to read a lot of science fiction, talks about getting to a point where you're like, you're you're a citizen of the planet. You're a human being. And a lot of
Yeah.
times you unite because an alien comes, right? So then you're not humans aren't fighting humans because now you have to fight something else. So then suddenly you
Yeah.
come together because of
Yes.
something else. But like until there's
Yeah.
something else, you keep on fighting.
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly. That's how it is.
but they, but it always goes by so quick. We hit a lot of different topics, but I really want people to check out fillthevoid.club, and that'll be fully clickable. So you'll be able to click on that link everywhere we're published and connect with you, and maybe tell people like if they click on that link, how do they connect with you there?
Yeah, you also go into my Instagram, which is fillthevoid.club. Send me a message. There's my personal Instagram as well in the Fill the Void Instagram and in LinkedIn as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you for being a guest on the Family Electric Ghost podcast. We will publish beyond the live podcast that was on Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook. We are on almost all the other platforms. And so we provide a landing page to your audience by tomorrow. And it also will give you the individual links and send you an MP4. And you can clip it up however you want on your own social media as reels or whatever you want to do. But thank you again for being
Thank
on the show.
you. Thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure having this conversation with you, and I really, really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great day. I know it's nighttime here, but
Thank you.